In Romans chapter 5, Paul reflects and interprets the character of Adam, and particularly Adam's action in the garden in Genesis chapter 3. But Paul is not the only Second Temple Jew to think and write about Adam, just as Paul was not the only Second Temple Jew to think and write about the character of Abraham. In this video, we are going to situate Paul within his Second Temple Jewish context by looking at other Jewish writers and thinkers and what they have to say about Adam. I will not be including Paul in our sort of survey here. I'm going to leave that to you. That is part of your job for course community assignment in this class for this week. But this is going to give you the opportunity to look at, think, and hear how other writers who are roughly contemporaneous with Paul are thinking about the figure of Adam, and compare and contrast Paul to their thinking about Adam. So the way that this will progress, so I'm going to show us 5 different writers or 5 different texts that reflect on the character of Adam in some form or fashion. I'll go to each text, offer some very brief comments on them, and then I will fill the screen with the text so you can read along with me, listen to what these writers say about Adam, and think about how they characterize Adam, sort of what role Adam plays in their thinking in that particular passage. And so we begin with the Alexandrian Jewish philosophical thinker, Philo of Alexandria. He reflects on both Adam and Eve and on the creation of the world, a treaty that is non-canonical in Judaism and in Christianity. He begins with Adam in our first selection here. We have now then set forth the beauty of the first created man in both respects, in body and in soul, if in a way much inferior to the reality, still to the extent of our power and to the best of our ability. And it cannot be but that his descendants, who all partake of his original character, must preserve some traces of their relationship to their father, though they may be but faint. And she, Eve, without any inquiry, prompted by an unstable and rash mind, acquiesced in the serpent's advice and ate of the fruit, and gave a portion of it to her husband, Adam. And this conduct suddenly changed both of them from innocence and simplicity of character to all kinds of wickedness, at which the father of all was indignant. For their actions deserved his anger, inasmuch as they, passing by the tree of eternal life, the tree which might have endowed them with perfection of virtue, and by means of which they might have enjoyed a long and happy life, preferred a brief and mortal, and I will not call it life, but time full of happiness, and accordingly he appointed them such punishment as was befitting. So what is Adam's character and what actions are described here? Back into the picture for us. A couple of different things noteworthy about Adam is that Adam is beautiful in body and in soul. So this is what Philo has been relating in the context that precedes this particular passage. He says, we have set forth, that is, we have already talked about, he has already written about the beauty of the first created person in his body and his soul. So for Philo, Adam is a beautiful creature. As a human, he is created beautifully with respect to his physical body, but also his soul. And Philo's Platonism is coming out there with this sort of body-soul bit. He also notes that Adam has the image of his father, or we have the image of our father, that all humans after Adam in some way, and particularly Philo, probably men, share in the image of Adam's beauty and Adam's excellence with respect to his body and to his soul. And then in the second part, Philo talks about the sort of lost virtue that came with respect to Adam and Eve's actions in Genesis chapter 3. But you'll notice that Philo really puts most of the blame on Eve rather than on Adam. That it's Eve's fault. Eve is prompted by her unstable and rash mind, and Adam is sort of an afterthought. Primarily the blame is Eve, and Adam just comes along and is sucked in to to Eve's unstable and rash minds and actions. And there is punishment for these actions, but the punishment is largely the sort of loss of their virtue. Philo doesn't necessarily say here that the punishment is that all humans after them are punished as sort of completely and wholly sinful. The punishment for the action is the anger that comes, and the loss of their virtue, and of time befitting a time of that is full of unhappiness, a brief mortal life that is not full of the happiness of virtue. All right, moving on to the Wisdom of Solomon, a text that we have engaged previously in this class with respect to Romans chapter 1. The Wisdom of Solomon, by way of reminder, is probably 1st century BCE to maybe early 1st century CE text. It's deuterocanonical in Eastern Orthodox and Roman Catholic Christianity. It's in the Apocrypha, or as non-canonical in Protestant Christianity. In two different places, one in Wisdom chapter 2 and one in Wisdom chapter 10, we get some reflections on Adam. For God created us for incorruption and made us in the image of his own eternity. But through the devil's envy, death entered the world, and those who belong to his company experience it. 10. Wisdom protected the first formed father of the world, Adam, when he alone had been created. She delivered him from his transgression and gave him strength to rule all things. But when an unrighteous man departed from her in his anger, he perished because in rage he killed his brother. When the earth was flooded because of him, wisdom again saved it, steering the righteous man by a paltry piece of wood. All right, so a couple of different things going on in here with respect to Adam's character and sort of the nature of sin in these passages. Is that wisdom really sort of minimizes Adam's role in bringing death into the world. Wisdom 10 says that wisdom protected the first formed father of the world. And that when he alone had been created, she delivered him from his transgression. So the sort of Adam's transgression is actually minimized in Wisdom chapters 10. And then the devil's envy is the thing that is what is to blame for death entering the world in Wisdom chapter 2. It's not necessarily Adam's wrongdoing or the human's wrongdoing, but the devil's envy is the sort of square place of blame in Wisdom chapter 2. And then notice also that more unrighteousness is sort of piled on in Wisdom chapter 10, two different acts. So when an unrighteous man departed from her in his anger, he perished because in rage he killed his brother. So here an allusion to the narrative of Cain and Abel. And then also an allusion just after that to Noah. And sort of wisdom is sort of celebrating wisdom, the idea of wisdom's role in these kinds of things, but also when it's engaging with why there is evil in the world, it spreads out the blame. It doesn't sort of squarely put it on Adam, but it uses these other allusions to say that sin and death are a part of this world, sort of with respect to those stories, those biblical texts from Genesis as well. So moving on to 2 Esdras, which is also known as 4 Ezra. 4 Ezra is a text probably written in the 1st century CE. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholicism, it is deuterocanonical, once again, apocryphal in Protestant Christianity. So I've given us two selections here from chapter 3 of 2 Esdras. And you led him, Adam, into the garden that your right hand had planted before earth appeared. And you laid upon him one commandment of yours, but he transgressed it, and immediately you appointed death for him and for his descendants. From him there sprang nations and tribes, peoples and clans without number. And every nation walked after its own will. They did ungodly things in your sight and rejected your commands, and you did not hinder them. For the first Adam, burdened with an evil heart, transgressed and was overcome, as were also all who were descended from him. Thus the disease became permanent. The law was in the hearts of the people along with the evil root, but what was good departed, and the evil remained. All right, so in this passage, we have something that maybe sounds a little bit more like Paul than we do in the previous passages. Adam is called a transgressor. He transgressed and was overcome. He brings death into the world, and by bringing death into the world, death sort of is passed along to all of Adam's descendants after him, as is sort of the disease of ungodliness. The hearts of the people with their evil root is passed along from Adam. So the sense that sort of sin comes from the first human and then is passed along as part of the human condition seems to be part of the way that for Ezra thinks about Adam. And on to Baruch here. Which is a text from the 2nd century CE and is non-canonical in all Christian traditions. I give us 3 different selections from 3 different chapters here. The first from chapter 17. For what did it profit Adam that he lived 930 years and transgressed that which he was commanded? Therefore, the multitude of time that he lived did not profit him, but brought death and cut off the years of those who were born from him. Chapter 3. Because when Adam sinned and death was decreed against those who should be born, when the multitude of those who should be born was numbered, and for that number a place was prepared where the living might dwell and the dead might be guarded. And then from chapter 48. And I answered and said, O Adam, what hast thou done to all those who are born from thee? And what will be said to the first Eve who hearkened to the serpent? For all this multitude are going to corruption, nor is there any numbering of those whom the fire devours. All right, so with respect to Baruch, we have a couple of different things. Once again, in a way very similar to for Ezra, Adam is declared to be a transgressor. That Adam's transgression has sort of an effect on the world to come, or on all that follow upon Adam, by bringing death into the world. So the charge is that Adam brings death, but also brings the corruption that comes with death. The sort of human bodies are corrupt and will go back to death, go back to their what they originally were, dust. This idea of corruption and death coming into the world because of Adam is present in Baruch. And lastly, we have the life of Adam and Eve, one of my favorite ones here. This is a first century, and again, the dating on the life of Adam and Eve sort of varies widely between scholars. Some think it's earlier than this, some think it's much later than this, but maybe perhaps very contemporaneous with Paul. And the life of Adam and Eve is a sort of narrative tradition, sort of fan fiction about Adam and Eve, and it's non-canonical in all Jewish and Christian traditions. So here I give us from 6 and 7. And Adam said, My children, much pain afflicts me. And they said, What is pain and illness? Adam said to them, When God made us, me and your mother, through whom I am dying, he gave us every plant in paradise. But concerning one, he commanded us not to eat of it, for we would die by it. And the hour drew near for the angels who were guarding your mother to ascend and worship the Lord. And the enemy gave to her, and she ate from the tree, since he knew that neither I nor the holy angels were near her. Then she gave us also to me to eat. When we both had eaten, God was angry with us. And God said, Since you have forsaken my covenant, I have submitted to your body to 70 plagues. So in the life of Adam and Eve, we get Adam explaining to his children what illness and pain is, because he is experiencing it. He's now starting to experience it as he is beginning to die. So Adam's sort of on his deathbed here, is what's going on in the narrative. And his children don't know what illness and pain is. They have yet to experience it. So Adam's sort of explaining it to them. And from Adam's own mouth, so the author of Life in Adam and Eve puts the story back into Adam's mouth of what happened in the garden, and sort of gives some more fan-fictive-like details about how this all happened. But what's interesting here is that Adam is the first to experience pain and illness. So this is a new thing for humans, and Adam is sort of beginning to describe it to his children. And the actions of Adam and Eve, and notice how Adam actually once again sort of puts the blame onto Eve, as other traditions will as well. But their actions then provoke God's anger and bring 70 plagues, and they also bring pain and illness. So the fact that the sort of whole dialogue is introduced by Adam explaining why there is pain and illness is an answer to the question. What is the answer to the question, what is pain and illness? Is this is the stuff I'm experiencing because of this action. So the sort of narrative connects the two dots of pain and illness, comes from Adam and Eve's different actions in the garden. All right, and so once again, just as it is your job with Abraham in Romans chapter 4, you are going to have the same task with Adam in chapter 5. That is to create a single slide that addresses Paul's use of and characterization of the character of Adam in Romans chapter 5 and anywhere else Adam might appear. So there are other places potentially where Adam and Eve appear in Paul's writing. So your job is to finish the lecture in a single slide, sort of putting Paul's description or Paul's take on Adam within its Second Temple Jewish context. So is Paul similar to some of our authors here? Is he different from some authors here? With the same caveat I gave in the last video, is beware of making Paul's take sort of just inherently right and better than other Second Temple Jewish takes. We don't have to make Judaism in whatever context it is look bad as Christians for Christianity to be good. But what is the sort of significance of Paul's treatment of Adam being similar to and different from these other authors? So what are the relevant texts, and what is it that Paul praises Adam for in these particulars?